Printer can print up to 10 lines per second. Welcome home, Columbia. Beautiful, beautiful. This printer can print up to 10 lines per second. This printer can print up to 10 lines per second.
Welcome to Lesson 2, Conditionals. There are two types of conditionals. There are if statements and switch statements. We're going to look at the if statement today, and at some other point in time, we'll look at the switch statement. So when you hear the word conditionals, I want you to think of an if statement or a switch statement, okay? And this is how it's going to look. So here's the code. I want you to go ahead and copy this down in your Atom file. Save it as conditionals.html, or you can save it as if.html, whichever you prefer. Copy that, and we will start writing some code after I come back. Okay, so we have three variables, and we have a number, we have text, and we have a Boolean, which is true. And by text, I also mean string. Text is called string in code. So the if statement is a way to test a variable value and make decisions in our code based on that value. So let me demonstrate. So we could say if my number, and we want, if my number is greater than 4, curly braces, and we're going to use console log here. So it's console.log, and we're going to output some text into the console log. So if my number is greater than 4, then console log, quote, it is greater than 4. Okay, let's see what happens there. I'm going to save that and load that. And as you can see, our console log says it is greater than 4, because it is. 5 is greater than 4. We can also have an else statement inside our if. So we could say else, and I'm just going to copy this whole thing down. And I'll say it is not greater than 4. So let's make it 3. Whoops. We need to make this 3. Okay. So my number is now 3, and we're testing my number, and we're saying if my number is greater than 4, which it's not, if it's greater than 4, output it is greater than 4. Else, console log, it is not greater than 4. Save that. Reload that. It is not greater than 4 because we changed it. And by the way, if you forgot how to open console log, sorry about that. I should have probably went over that before. Let me reload this page. When you open a web browser, console log is not open. So I have Chrome here. We go up to View, Developer, JavaScript console, and there's our console. In Safari or Explorer or Edge or Opera, etc., finding your console log will be a little bit different. So you may have to Google that, look that up. Okay, back to the code. We can also use strings. We could say something like if, let me copy this, copy. If my string equals, and notice I'm using two equal signs. I'll explain that in a second. If my string equals Jim, then console log hello Jim, else console log I don't know you. All right, save that. Go to the web page, reload it. Hello Jim. Okay, so two equals sign actually means equals. What does one equal sign mean? Forgot the semicolon here. One equal sign actually means a sign. Let me explain. So when we're reading this line, let my number equal 3, really the better way to say that is take the value 3 and assign it to the variable my number. Take the next one. Take the string Jim, assign it to my string, etc. And so assignment and equals are different. We use equals when we're testing in an if statement. And two equals. We use two equals when we're testing an if statement. And then one equals really means assignment. Okay? So let's look at the Boolean. If my Boolean equals true, then console log it is true. Else it is not true. Save that, and let's open this page and reload that. It is true because the Boolean value is true. If I change that to false, change my Boolean to false, save it, reload this, it is not true. Okay, so it's testing our variables. One other fun thing I like to do is work with random numbers. Random numbers are used a lot in video games, for instance, and they're actually used a lot in what's called simulation for all kinds of different things. Simulating financial markets, simulating weather, building a kind of a model of a natural system. We use random numbers. We can use random numbers here. And the way we use a random number is we use a JavaScript object called math.random. It looks like this. Let num equal math.random. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just ignore this code at the bottom there, and I'm going to console log num to show you what it is. So console log num. So let's see what this random number is all about. Reload that. I'm going to make this a little bigger because that's a long number. So notice this blue number here. That's our random number. Watch when I reload. This output right here is from our old code. So watch this number. Every time I reload, it's different. And notice it's always below 1. 0.83, 0.01. And it's a long number, okay? A lot of decimal places. All right, so math random generates a random number between 0 and 1. Okay, so what do we do with that? Let's play around. Let's test it. Let's get rid of the console log. No, actually, you know what? take that back. Okay, so let's test it. We're going to go ahead and console log it, but then we're going to test it. So we might say something like this. If num is greater than, let's say 0.5, because that is right in the middle between 0 and 1, right? So half the time, num will be over 0.5, and half the time it'll be under 0.5. So it's like tossing a coin in a way. 50-50 chance, as we call it. So if num is greater than 0.5, let's call that high. We'll console log high. And if it's not, we'll call that low, because that means it's under 0.5. Save that. Okay, so this is, we got 0.76, that's high. 0.83 is high. 0.97 is high. 0.30 is low. Okay? So you get that. It made the decision, it figured out if it was high or low, and it outputted based on that. Okay. So you're probably looking at this and saying, oh, what are we going to do with that? Well, here's the thing with an if statement. It allows us to branch our code. It allows us to make decisions, and based on the value of a variable, we can branch our code and do different things. Now, are we going to console log all the time? No. We'll be doing much more interesting stuff. If statements are used all the time to make decisions in code. Okay, so they're very powerful, very important. Okay, so here's another thing we can do with an if statement. We can use what's called and, or. Those are logical statements. So we can say something like this. If num is greater than or equal to 0.33 and 2 ampersands, that's what that's called, an ampersand. And that's up above your number 7, shift 7. So if num is greater than or equal to 0.33 and num is less than or equal to 0.66. So what we're saying in there, if num is kind of in the middle of the range, it's greater than 0.33, it's less than 0.66, right in the middle. So if that's true, then let's console log middle. And if that's not true, let's console log. I'm going to use the word extreme. That means it's on the extreme end, or on the extreme low end, or the extreme high end. Okay, or I could say not in the center or whatever. It doesn't really matter, as long as you get the picture here. And I've got some green code here, which means I made a mistake somewhere. Oh, I forgot a quote here. There we go. Save that. Let's reload that. So I got 0.73, which is extreme, 0.75 extreme, and then 0.37 middle. So now we're testing in a range of numbers, okay? So another thing we can do is use or. Okay, so let's try or. Let's say less than 0.33, or those are pipes. Those are called pipes. Those are right above your enter button. If num is less than or equal to 0.33, or num is greater than. So what we're saying there is it on the extreme? Okay, if it is on the extreme, then we'll console log extreme. And if it's not, we'll say middle. So we kind of reversed what we did before. Let's save that and see what happens. So 0.79 extreme, 0.28 extreme, 0.125 extreme, 0.77 extreme, 0.77. Wow, a lot of extremes. There we go, 0.63 middle. Okay, again, we're testing the range. We're just using an or logical statement instead of an and. Okay, that can become very powerful because we can test all kinds of ranges. Or we could do something like this. Let's get rid of num. We can say if my string equals Jim, or, whoops, that's not or, that's or my string equals Sally, then console log welcome. Else console log I don't know you. Okay, so save that. Let me do something before I save that. We're not using the number anymore, so let's get rid of that. So we know my string equals Jim, so let's save that and see what happens up here. It says welcome. Okay, so let's go back to the code and change my string to Ted. Save that, reload it. I don't know you. Okay? So we can test strings, we can test numbers, we can test Booleans, all kinds of possibilities. Okay, so that is the if statement. And it's, again, very powerful. You see it in every coding language that I know of. So it's important to learn. And it's very useful, actually. We'll be using it a lot. So one last thing before we leave. If you are taking these lessons and you're wondering at this point, I mean, we haven't gotten very far, but if you're wondering, okay, I'm learning all this stuff, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it, you will. Okay, just be patient. We are learning different tools, and we need several tools in order to write larger programs. So the if statement is just one of the new tools that we're learning, and be patient. It gets, with every lesson, I think it's going to get more interesting. I think you're going to enjoy it. So thanks for joining me, and see you in lesson 3.